Welcome aboard Ted Talks Cruises, the podcast where wanderlust meets wisdom. Join our two hosts on a cruising adventure full of laughter, learning, and luxury. Ken Conan is a cruise rookie. He's wide-eyed, full of questions, and maybe still figuring out which end is aft. Ted Blank is a seasoned cruise expert who's been there, done that, and he even has a preferred deck chair. Each week, Ted and Ken dive into the world of cruising, from picking the right itinerary to insider tips, their personal insights, and behind-the-scenes secrets. Whether you're planning your first cruise or you're a platinum tier cruiser looking for fresh perspectives, Ted Talks Cruises brings relatable stories, helpful advice, and plenty of good vibes. So get ready to laugh, learn, and set sail. No passport required.
Hey, it's Ken Conan with Ted Talks Cruises. I'm the travel rookie. I've got our awesome expert with us today. His name is Mr. Ted Blank. Thanks for joining us today, Ted. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's great to be here. And I'm Ted Blank. I'm the cruise expert on our podcast. And I've got about 50 cruises of my own under my belt. But I've also planned thousands of cruises for my clients as well. So it's what I do all day, every day.
That's awesome. I was feeling like I was kind of a big shot with 4 cruises under my belt now. And I'm not that cool yet.
Yeah, you're not going to get an award for the most cruised person in the room with me. So.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. That's unbelievable. So 50 and just all over the world, right?
All over the world.
That's awesome.
And I enjoy cruising. I enjoy cruising for the sake of cruising, but I really love destination cruising. And destination cruising is about going to a destination and seeing it, and the ship really becomes kind of your floating hotel. It takes you from interesting place to interesting place. In the Caribbean, it's more of a resort-style cruising where you're enjoying the weather, and the ports are kind of secondary. Destination cruising in Europe and Alaska, South Pacific, places like that, much more about the interesting ports that you're going to visit, and the cruise ship is kind of the vehicle that gets you from A to B and adds a sparkle to the experience as well.
Yeah, I love it. And last time, just a quick recap, we were talking about the Med, and I think it was
well, it all started because it was on your bucket list.
Yeah, definitely.
You have the Mediterranean on your bucket list. And,
high on the list. It's next.
Yeah, we actually did a survey of our newsletter subscribers.
Okay.
And we asked them where they wanted to go next, and 40% of them said Mediterranean.
Is that right?
So there's a tie. Mediterranean and Alaska were the top 2 places folks were interested in going on ocean cruises.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it is a very, very popular destination, very, very high on people's bucket list. So you are certainly not alone in that.
You know what's funny is we were talking about we want to do the Med cruise, but we're like, we kind of want to go back to Alaska too, which I never thought I'd say. I would think I was thinking to myself when I went, I'm like, well, this will be a good check. It's going to be awesome, but I never thought I'd be thinking, I can't wait to go back. And now so
I think that's the interesting thing about bucket lists is they never get shorter.
Right.
And I've been to very, very few places where I would say to myself, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
Like usually I'd be like, I would love to go back. And fortunately I get to do that. And that gives me a chance to see things from a different perspective. And we're going to talk about the Mediterranean a little bit differently today.
Love that.
Last week we talked about the Eastern Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Places like Greece and Turkey, Italy, Venice, that side of Italy. Today we're going to talk about the Western Mediterranean, which is Spain and Portugal and France and the west coast of Italy.
That's awesome. And if I remember right from our pre-talk, we're going to start in London, which is not a spot I would have said, it seems like we'd start a Western, Med cruise in London.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And that is, I think, the neat thing about cruising in Europe is there are a lot of ports where cruises start.
Okay.
Scattered across the continent. And the neat thing is you can always spend some time in that city before you get on the ship.
Okay.
And so the particular cruise we're going to talk about was a round-trip cruise from Southampton, which is the port for London. It's about 2 hours from downtown London.
Okay.
But the great thing is you can start out with a pre-cruise program in London. Again, we'll always mention, it's something we can help you arrange with the cruise line itself or arrange something independently. Yeah. And that's what I did on this particular cruise. I arranged something independently for myself.
Okay.
And we have a great program where we work with selected luxury hotels. And these hotels have, kind of negotiated with them, and they've agreed to offer some great added value amenities for our clients. Wow. So things like free breakfast, complimentary upgrades, free Wi-Fi, food and beverage credits that you can use in the the hotel restaurants and things like that. So there was a hotel that was new to the program that I wanted to give a try to. And so I ended up staying there for 2 nights and had a chance just to explore London. This particular hotel is kind of in the east end of London, very far down towards like Tower Bridge. Oh, sure. And it was walking distance to St. Paul's Cathedral.
Wow.
So we started out with a walk through St. Paul's Cathedral, a guided tour of the cathedral. Very interesting, very different than Westminster Abbey, a whole different world. And then we took a walking tour of what's called the City of London. And the City of London is actually part of the City of London. It's a very strange that only in Britain would they have this, but it's a specific piece of London where the financial district is located.
Oh, sure.
And it was basically destroyed in World War II. It was very, very heavily bombed. And so it was a very, very interesting tour because there were a few remnants of old London scattered throughout it, but then you also saw all the very modern things. And London happens to have a Lord Mayor. And the Lord Mayor has a carriage that would actually, I think, make the king blush. It's quite an elaborate carriage, and it happened to be on display when we were there, so we had a chance to see the carriage there. Awesome. We went to a show in the West End, just a neat opportunity to see kind of a Broadway quality production, and 1 full day in London, and then headed down to Southampton to embark on the cruise.
How fun is that?
And the great thing about London, easy city to get to from the United States.
Right.
Probably the most nonstop flights of any European capital go to London.
And that's one of those things that comes into play when you think about like, hey, my cost for flights, if it's an easy in and out, that's going to help, I would think.
Yeah, it can help with cost. I think it just makes it an easier trip too. You don't have to make as many connections and things like that. So you arrive, you're a little more rested. Yeah. 2 days in London, you can kind of go by pretty quickly. But if you hadn't had a long flight to get there, it's easier.
That's awesome. That is another place that I've never been to that it's on my list to do, but I've just never been there. Awesome. So you make your way over to Southampton, jump on what ship are we jumping on?
So we traveled on a ship called the Queen Victoria.
Nice.
And the Queen Victoria is owned by a British cruise line called Cunard Line. And they're a very different cruise product in the luxury space than many other luxury cruise lines.
Yeah.
And the main reason for that is that their ships are quite a bit larger than the regular luxury cruise ships. And so we've talked about, for example, like Regent 7 Seas cruises. Their ships carry 700-800 passengers.
Okay.
Queen Victoria carries about 2,800 passengers.
Oh my gosh. Quite a large, that's like 4 times if my math is
quite a large ship.
Wow.
And you're suddenly thinking to yourself, well, is this like one of those big kind of mass market Caribbean cruise ships? And it isn't like that at all. Cunard is the only company that does luxury on a big ship.
Okay.
And that's really unique because if you enjoy cruising and you like the amenities that only a big ship can offer, this is the perfect match for you. So things like,
I was just going to ask, tell me about the amenities that you're talking about.
Yeah, things like, multiple swimming pools, incredible spa, broad choice of dining venues.
Got it.
Super entertainment. The full-scale productions that you see on cruise ships, and a great choice of accommodations.
Really?
And so Cunard is a company that can deliver luxury at kind of a value-oriented price point, all the way up to a real, true luxury experience.
Wow.
And we'll come back and we'll talk about the different types of accommodations. But they're a British company, so they have a little bit of a British flair to them. Afternoon tea is a highlight, and it is exactly what you would expect. You walk into the main lounge of the ship, and they have a harpist who plays, white-gloved waiters.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like tea.
No,
I'd much rather have coffee.
Sure. Yep.
But I always make an exception, and I always have some tea, and I put so much sugar and milk in it that it's kind of like doesn't taste like anything. But the attraction is they first come by with little finger sandwiches. And some poor person has to cut the crusts off all the finger sandwiches. But they're really good. And they have one that I really like. It's called Coronation Chicken, of all things. And so it was a recipe that actually was developed for Queen Elizabeth II's coronation.
Okay.
And remember when she was crowned, I think it was 1952, right after World War II. And so there was still rationing.
Right.
In England, they were still deep in recovery from World War II. So it was meant to be kind of an economical recipe, but it's basically a curry chicken salad with raisins.
Sounds
I think
pretty good.
It's really good. But that's oftentimes one of the tea sandwiches. You know, they'll have salmon, they'll have cucumbers, lots of different options. Then they come by with a freshly made scone.
Oh.
And you can have butter with your scone. You can have clotted cream, jam to put on your scone.
Love it.
And then the highlight is they bring out the beautiful dessert tray, and they serve you individual servings of pretty much any dessert you can imagine.
So great.
And so it's almost enough to put you off your dinner. You have enough food to eat that, but it is one of the truly unique experiences of a Cunard cruise to have a real, authentic English afternoon tea on board a ship.
And what time is tea at? Is it at noon, at 1, at
3 to 4:30?
3 to 4:30. Okay, got it.
And you don't have to dress up for this. I think that's a misconception that sometimes people might have about a luxury cruise like this.
Sure.
You don't have to dress up to go to afternoon tea.
Okay.
And it's also available in their buffet. So you can do kind of a self-service tea as well, or if you're, sitting by the pool and just enjoying that, you can grab it, bring it back out, and enjoy it. So very kind of a little civilized accent that's added to the cream on the cake, I guess I'd say.
I like it.
And you can have coffee too. Usually about halfway through, I give up and ask for coffee because I just don't like tea. Not my thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, we were on a river cruise, and I forget which one it was, but they did an afternoon tea, and I wasn't kind of in the same boat. The tea was fine, but the little sandwiches were
finger sandwiches were really good,
super fun. Yeah,
and one of the things that didn't do it on this particular trip, but in London, one of the neat things to do is to go to afternoon tea.
Yeah,
like at the Ritz Hotel or Fortnum and Mason, which is kind of it's a grocery store, but that's not really what it is. And they have this beautiful tea room, and you have this just incredible tea experience. And they have, I don't know, like 100 different teas.
Oh my!
So I finally found out if I get like a minty tea, I can.
You're in for that,
but otherwise, just don't like tea.
That's great.
Yeah,
love it. So do we? So we jump onto the ship, the Cunard ship. What was the name of the one that you were on?
Queen Victoria.
Queen Victoria, and then are we out for a sea day, and then we arrive somewhere?
Yeah. So if you look at the map, it's quite a ways actually from London to the Mediterranean. So you have basically 2 days at sea.
Okay.
Sailing south around the coast of France, across the Bay of Biscay, along the coast of Portugal, and you come into the Mediterranean through the Straits of Gibraltar.
Okay, got it.
So one of the things that sets a Cunard cruise apart from other cruises is that they have a very heavy focus on sea days.
Okay.
So if you remember last time, we were talking about an Eastern Mediterranean cruise, and every single day you were in a different port.
Yes.
So you got a real in-depth experience. You're seeing a lot. You're getting a lot of bang for your 10 days of travel. This was a 14-day cruise, but we had far fewer ports because we had more days at sea.
Okay.
So in my opinion, it's a more relaxing way to travel. Port, sea day, kind of a thing. So you have your day, your busy day, then you get to relax on board the ship.
I like that.
Yeah, and they really have incredible activities and things like that on board the ship. They have an excellent lecture program.
Really?
Where they bring guest lecturers on board. So on this particular cruise, they had a gentleman who had been Princess Diana's bodyguard. So that was very interesting. He'd written a book, so he was talking about his book. They had an art historian.
Wow.
And then they also had, it was kind of a royal theme, I guess, they had someone who was Queen Elizabeth's press secretary. His name was Dickie Arbiter.
Oh, my gosh.
So people maybe have heard of him. But anyway, so it's very interesting. They give talks throughout the day. You can hear them. Learn from them, but you can also, you see him at the buffet and you can sit down and chat with him. I mean, these people are very approachable. They're on the cruise with you as your fellow passengers, but these are all top notch speakers. And they're not like the port lecturers who sometimes you'll hear on cruises who will tell you, oh, here's where to go to buy diamonds. And by the way, here's a 5% discount. These are in-depth. Yeah, these are in-depth lecturers. So that's a neat part of it, but there's just so much to do. And the variety of dining options, the variety of bars on there. They have their own gin bar.
What?
And they make their own gin.
No way.
And the menu,
on the ship?
On the ship. Well, no, the gin is made on land.
Within Cunard's
family, they make their own beer. And the menu at this gin bar, it's like 40 pages long.
No way.
I mean, you could not possibly try every gin concoction they've come up with.
Wow.
And some of them are just super, super imaginative.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. They have a British pub. And in the pub, you can actually go and have an authentic British pub lunch. which actually chicken curry is one of the things they serve.
No way, really?
Yeah, but very, very fish and chips, that kind of authentic lunch. It's got dartboards.
Oh
I mean, it's like you've literally gone into this English pub, and they have more English beers than you can shake a stick at.
Wow!
And so it's a really, really amazing onboard experience that complements the ports that you'll visit as well.
And I should ask, being the rookie, when you go to the pub or you go to these restaurants, is that included or is that extra or is there a different package or how does that work?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. And that's where Cunard is a little different from the other luxury cruise lines. They are not as inclusive as the other cruise lines. And so,
I'm just joking over here. It's okay. You're doing great. Okay. I'm going to hit mute. We'll be good.
So it is not as an inclusive of an experience as the other cruise lines. And so that allows you to have that luxury experience at a lower cost. But you do purchase beverages, you do purchase drinks if you want to, or you can purchase a beverage package.
Got it.
If you stay in certain staterooms, there is a beverage package included with their suites. And we'll come back and we'll talk about the suites because that's kind of a fun piece of the experience. Yeah. But you can either purchase drinks as you go, purchase beverage packages. The food is included. So you can go to the pub, your meal is included. But if you want a beer, it's either part of a package or you pay for that.
Got it.
And the other big thing as we start to talk about the ports is that shore excursions are not included in the price of this cruise. So again, it's going to bring the base price down quite a bit lower from the more inclusive experiences. And pros and cons to that. I think the con is that you kind of do have to figure out what you're going to do in port a little bit.
Right.
The pro is you can kind of do anything you want to do. Right. And the cruise line will have a nice selection of excursions you can choose from. Or what I really recommend for folks is to think about doing some privately guided tours. Huh. And so that's what we did throughout the course of this cruise.
Cool.
And it gives you such a better, it's a personal experience.
Yeah.
It goes faster. It's very efficient.
Yeah.
When you only have 2 or 4 people waiting in line to go to the bathroom versus a motor coach full, you kind of get to see a little more. You get to talk to your guide a little more. And we got to do some really different things that not everybody necessarily would have done.
I love that idea, and it's something that Shannon and I talked about the next time we do another river cruise, is instead of doing the excursions that are included, city tours and all that, we're going to do some more private things.
Yeah.
I just think it's a brilliant idea.
It's a great idea. And it really, they can be done very white glove where somebody's waiting for you at the pier with, Mercedes to take you off and do things. You can meet a guide somewhere in the city. You can get there independently. Yeah. There are a lot of different ways to kind of skin that private excursion cat, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so that's one of the things that we'll talk through with our clients is, hey, maybe this less inclusive option is a better one for you because then we can customize what it is that you do.
I love that. All things that you and your team are used to doing, and I'm sure you do all the time for your clients. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So should we dive into the itinerary?
I know we've been at sea for a hot second. I'm ready to pull into port here. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it's always like, oh darn, we're done with the sea days. Now we have to get off at our first.
So you really enjoy the sea days?
I do. I like the sea days. Yeah, it's so relaxing, and you kind of can disconnect a little bit. I like a mix.
Yeah,
I think is maybe more my personal taste.
Love that.
But the first port we visited is actually just at the entrance to the Straits of Gibraltar.
Okay.
And it's the city of Seville.
Okay.
You don't actually dock in Seville. In most cases, only really small cruise ships can make their way into the heart of Seville. Yeah. You dock in a little town called Cadiz. It's about an hour away. And so our driver was waiting right on the pier, got in the car, off to Seville.
Wow.
Now, one advantage of that is we got there 45 minutes, an hour before any of the other people from the cruise ship got there. So we got ahead of them.
That's great.
In our little circuit of the city. And Seville is a beautiful Spanish city. Probably in my opinion, the most beautiful Spanish city that you can visit. It hosted a World's Fair. Back when World's Fairs were really a big deal. And so they built this huge complex that they call the Plaza de España or the Plaza of Spain.
Yeah.
But the buildings have all these painted tiles all over the buildings, all over the fountains. It's in a park. They have oranges that grow in the park.
Wow.
I remember there were wild, like wild park peacocks running around the park. So just a beautiful, beautiful entry point into the city. And then there's the old quarter of the city where there is the Alhambra Palace, which was where the Moors, the Muslims who occupied Spain for several hundred years, built this just beautiful palace.
Wow.
Beautiful gardens. The gardens are just absolutely incredible. And then across the street is the cathedral. And you'll never guess who's buried in the cathedral.
Christopher Columbus.
You got it.
I didn't tell you. I've been here before.
Oh, you've been to Seville. I didn't know that.
So I was like, I'm going to surprise him with this one.
Dang.
So
how did you end up in Seville?
My brother, who was a bit of a nomad back in the day, was studying over there. Right. And so I was 20-something, and he invited me over, and I said, yeah, I'll come over. And so we toured the city, and there's not a whole lot I remember because it was a long.
It's pretty compact.
Yeah, but it was that cathedral, though, I will tell you, was amazing. Like for me, I walked in, and this is my first experience in Europe.
Oh, okay.
And so I walked into the cathedral and I went,
holy cow.
Because the columns and it literally was, and this might sound a little nerdy, but I'm like a Star Wars fan. And I felt like I was in like a Star Wars, like, because it's just, it's just amazing, right?
Immense. It's kind of dark. It's very Spanish.
Yes.
And it's so different than cathedrals like when you were in Cologne, if you remember that cathedral in Cologne, or some of the cathedrals in Vienna, very, very different.
Yes.
Like the Catholic religion in Spain is a little different than it is in other places. So it's one of the most, I think Seville is like one of those places I'd say top 5 places in Europe as cruise ports. Seville belongs on that list.
Yeah. Amazing. And correct me if I'm wrong here. Your memory is much better than mine, but there was like an area where it was all gold inlay or something in the cathedral.
Yes, like a treasury.
Yes.
The amount of wealth in in Spain.
Yeah.
At that when these things were built was incredible.
Yeah.
That's where all the gold from the Incas and the Mayas went to Spain to furnish their cathedral.
I didn't think about that.
That's how Spain got rich the first time.
Wow.
First time around. So Columbus is buried there in a very elaborate tomb. So it is a neat city and well worth a visit. Very cool.
Very cool. We were there during and you have to help me out with this again. It's the dance, is it the flamenco?
Mm-hmm.
Was huge. They were having a festival at the time, and a bunch of the flamenco dancers were out doing their and that was amazing. We also, one more tidbit that we did not go to, but we saw the exit of a bullfight that was happening. And to say that it was a massive crowd that was very excited about the fighter that had just won or whatever, it was something else. It was really cool. So
if my memory is correct, the opera Carmen is set in Seville. And it's about a bullfighter. An ill-fated bullfighter in his tragic love life. So
I love it. I love it. All right, I've got no more surprises for you on this trip.
Okay, well,
that's the only one I had.
You caught me. I got you with The Sound of Music, and you got me with Seville. So, but it is. I think probably at the time you were there, it probably wasn't as big of a cruise destination, and now because of the port in Cadiz and how close it is a nice option for a beautiful day in Spain.
Yeah,
great way to start the cruise.
Great people in Spain as well.
Great
very
food.
Friendly. Food was amazing. Yes, awesome. So we wrap up Seville, and
day
then
at sea.
Yep, another day at sea.
So you got hot day exploring, relax.
Okay. And is this kind of the pace? It's a day at sea.
Just about.
On to your next beautiful city. Okay.
Just about. Sometimes you'll have 2 ports back to back, and our next 2 will be back to back.
Okay.
Which were Florence in Italy and Rome in Italy.
Oh my gosh.
And so Florence is quite a ways from the ocean.
Okay.
Actually, you dock in a place called Livorno. Which is just a big industrial port. And you travel by motor coach to Florence. It's about an hour and a half away. Beautiful ride through kind of the Tuscan countryside to get there, but a fair distance.
Yeah.
Many people will also go to Pisa. Pisa's right there.
Oh,
it's
really?
quite a bit closer, so you can see the Leaning Tower.
Yeah.
And you can combine the 2 together, and there are a lot of excursions that do combine Florence and Pisa.
Fun.
But I've been to Pisa before.
Okay.
So in this case, we just headed straight to Florence. And so Florence has really 2 things going for it. It's got very interesting history and architecture and art.
Yeah.
And it's a foodie city.
What? Really?
So, yeah. So our private excursion combined the two together.
All right. Now
so,
I'm perking up over here.
Yeah. So the neat thing is we had the same guide through both pieces of it. And we went to a relatively small church called Santa Croce, which is on the edge of town. And a lot of times when you travel by motor coach to Florence, the drop-off point is near Santa Croce.
Okay.
So we met our tour guide there and then proceeded to tour the city. And Santa Croce is an interesting church. Machiavelli is buried there.
Okay.
And Dante's tomb is there.
Really?
Except Dante's not buried there.
Oh.
Yeah, he's somewhere else.
It sounds like a riddle that I would have fell for.
That's interesting. So Dante's buried there, and the guide's like, no, he's not. This is just his tomb. I'm like, okay. So we had London, and now we have Dante's empty tomb. So
makes sense.
Yeah. So then that was stressful enough that we had to sit down and have a cup of coffee.
Well, hello.
Afterwards, on this beautiful plaza outside of the church, and Italy is renowned for its coffee, and so, you have a little espresso after your morning motor coach ride and your bus tour, and then we embarked on the foodie portion of the tour.
Yeah,
we went to a market, just a public market, and that's one of the things that I just kind of find endlessly fascinating wherever I go, is to go to those kind of, what we might call it a farmer's market here in the United States. And so this particular market, it's a permanent structure.
Okay.
And it's kind of covered but open air. Yeah. And so they have like the fish department and all the other departments. But then they have the pasta department.
Oh, my.
And, it's amazing how many different types of pasta there are that I had never even heard.
Oh, my gosh. And I mean,
so many shapes and sizes
And these aren't like coming out of a box. Somebody probably made these, and they're little.
They're in a refrigerated case, so people buy their food for the day, take it home, and cook it.
How amazing is that going to be, right?
Yeah. Wow. So we had we sampled some cheese and sausage.
Oh my gosh!
There, that was kind of the theme of the foodie tour, was a little bit of sampling.
Yeah.
And then we crossed over the big bridge in the center of Florence. It's called the Ponte Vecchio.
Okay.
It's a very historic bridge.
I've heard of that.
It's got shops along the side that sell gold. And we went to a little wine store on the other side of the river. And it was run by this little old man who kind of looked like a Harry Potter gnome. And his cellar was in the basement. So you went down in the basement and everything had cobwebs. And, he had like locked jail doors that he had wine behind. And he picked a couple bottles out and we got to taste some Chianti and other wines from the region of Tuscany.
Yeah.
Florence is in Tuscany. So now we had a wine tasting.
Fun.
And then we went to apparently the best gelato in Florence.
Oh my gosh.
So we had a little gelato.
Love that.
And then back across the bridge to the center of Florence where the huge cathedral is located.
Okay.
It's called the Duomo or the Dome.
Okay.
And the Dome was built, this was kind of a predecessor church to St. Peter's in Rome. And it's very, very famous for its dome. You can actually climb to the top. We didn't have time to do that, but you can climb to the top. And then across the square is the statue of David by Michelangelo in front of the Signoria, which is kind of the city hall. And then there are the two big art museums there, the Accademia, where the real statue is. They moved David inside so he didn't get destroyed by the weather. So the one outside is a reproduction. So, you've got history, art, architecture, food. Perfect day in Florence. Then back to the show.
And again, I'm asking myself, why have I not done this cruise yet? What's going on over there, Ken?
Yeah. So next stop was Rome.
Wow.
And again, Rome is one of those cities that's a fair distance from the port in Civitavecchia to the city.
Yeah.
An hour and a half by motor coach.
Okay.
It's a great place to start and end a cruise. Not the greatest port of call because you don't get as much time there because of that distance.
Okay. Makes sense.
So this was a place to focus and kind of do something very, very specific. So this was the time that we did the tour of the Colosseum, the Capitoline Hill, which is the area right there where Rome was founded.
Okay.
Remember Romulus and Remus were the kids who were raised by wolves and they started Rome there. And then the old Roman Forum is there as well.
No way. Wow.
So again, we had a private guide, very in-depth tour of the Colosseum. Really interesting. It was about a 4.5 hour tour by the time all was said and done.
Yeah.
Had lunch, late lunch, headed back to the ship.
Nice.
So, there was kind of enough time to do one thing well on that day.
Okay.
And then, thank goodness, a day at sea. because it was hot, hot and sweaty. Even in October, it was hot weather in Rome.
Okay.
And then we headed back to Spain, and we were supposed to go to Barcelona.
Oh, sure.
But they were having some pro-independence riots there.
I remember you mentioning it. This is like a year or so ago, right?
Yeah, this was a couple of years ago.
Okay, yeah.
So we ended up not going to Barcelona.
Okay.
We went to a little town called Cartagena
Okay.
in southern Spain. Really, actually quite a beautiful city. It's a big naval base, so there's like a very interesting naval museum there if you're interested in like naval aviation. They have airplanes up on spikes outside.
That. Yeah.
There's a fortress in the center of the city that's been, an active fort for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then we headed off to explore kind of the main downtown. And there's a lot of very nice Art Nouveau architecture in Cartagena. It kind of came into its own between the 1800s or the late 1900s, early 20th century. So some really beautiful, beautiful architecture there. Fun little restaurants and cafes. They have like an orange rum drink instead of a rum and Coke. They have an orange rum drink that you can, have a sip of that and then take a nap as you wait. And then it was back to the ship. Another day at sea, and we headed over to Gibraltar.
Okay.
So now we've totally changed gears to a little British outpost at the very end of Spain.
Right.
And so it does feel like you're back in England.
Why am I thinking Rock of Gibraltar?
And the Rock of Gibraltar is there. That's right there. And so you can take a cable car up to the top of the rock.
Oh, my.
And the view is astonishing.
Really?
You can see all the way across into Morocco. You can see the Atlas Mountains.
No.
And you can see quite a distance into Spain. So you can see why the British grabbed this right at the mouth of the Mediterranean and holding onto it for dear life, because it's probably the most strategic outpost in the world. During World War II, it was very heavily fortified. And so parts of that have been preserved as a museum. There are some incredible caverns in the rock that have perfect acoustics.
No way.
And so some of the singers like Andrea Bocelli or Il Volo will do concerts there that are just amazing concerts. And then they have these little monkeys that are called Barbary apes. And they run around, and they're very cute. I wish the tourists wouldn't taunt them as much as they do.
Oh, really?
Some of these tourists really need to stay home. Their behavior is just kind of appalling, but kind of cute to watch these little monkeys run around. And then the downtown is very British feel to it. It's got British shops, British brands.
Yeah.
It's part of England, essentially.
It's crazy.
So it's a really neat place to stop and very walkable.
Okay.
Some people took excursions that went into Spain from there, which you can typically do, but there's a lot to see in Gibraltar as well. And then the bay that Gibraltar is in is just gigantic.
Okay.
And it's full of ships, because a lot of ships will come there and pick up fuel on their way to and fro. And there's some shipyards there and some big ports and, ferries going back and forth to Morocco. So ships everywhere.
That's fun.
Well. And then we turned around and headed back up the coast to England.
Okay.
And so, not as many ports as in that first cruise, but, some nice days at sea to make it a little more of a relaxing trip through Europe rather than kind of a more destination intensive trip.
And remind me, how many, was it 10 days?
This was 14 days.
14 days. Okay. So 2 weeks.
Yeah. So 2 weeks.
That's awesome.
Yep. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the food on board the ship. I know we always find ourselves.
I got my seatbelt on and I'm buckled
ourselves talking about about the food. Yeah. So, in the good old days, back when Cunard's business was running back and forth across the Atlantic, they had a first class section. They had a second class section. They even had steerage, like on the Titanic.
No way.
But as they've evolved into a cruise ship, they no longer have those class distinctions.
Okay.
So basically, the entire ship is available to everyone.
Okay.
But there is a distinction when it comes to dining. And so if you stay in one of the kind of standard staterooms on board the ship, you dine in a restaurant that's called the Britannia restaurant.
Okay.
And it is beautiful. It is elegant, 2 stories, exquisite food, very, very gourmet feeling food. There will be a couple nights on this cruise where the gentlemen actually do have to wear a jacket and a tie.
Really?
On this particular cruise, there were 3.
Wow.
Other nights, button shirt, Dockers, are fine. So they have these gala nights where people dress up and they have dancing, ballroom dancing, and it's kind of a fun, kind of enhances the experience.
Yeah.
Different than anybody else. Most cruise lines have moved away from that, but I think it's a fun experience. And so, get dressed up and just enjoy an evening, a very special evening, kind of out on the town.
That's fun.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I remember the first cruise we went on, and I thought it was that way for all cruises. We were on a river cruise. So I brought a jacket, and nobody was wearing them on that cruise.
No,
because
most cruise lines have gone to a more casual thing. This is something that sets it apart. And it is fun. It is really fun. And if you don't want to dress up, there are restaurants and bars that are open to you.
Sure.
You don't have to do that. Right. But a lot of people like to do it, and it's just kind of fun. It's just kind of fun. And it's we all kind of clean up nicely, and adds to the experience. So you've got the Britannia restaurant. Yep. If you stay in a mini suite or a suite, you dine in restaurants that are called the grills.
Okay.
And there's a Princess Grills and a Queen's Grill. So if you're in the mini suites, you're in the Princess Grill. If you're in the full suites, you're in the Queen's Grill. And these restaurants are located at the very top of the ship.
Oh,
floor-to-ceiling windows. It's absolutely incredible views.
Wow.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner, they're open.
Wow.
Every guest has their own table that's reserved for them.
Sure.
And you can come anytime during the open hours of the restaurant for your meal.
Wow.
And I will say that the meals are absolutely exquisite. The service is actually just absolutely exquisite. So personal, so attentive. The cuisine is very imaginative. And they do tableside preparations.
What?
So they do like crepes Suzette, duck à l'orange, where they come by, and cook it, put the brandy, light it, it flames up. It's just a very, very special experience. And if you travel in the grill suites, you also get a beverage package that's good throughout the ship as well. So it's a more all-inclusive experience. Gratuities are also included for the ship's staff. So it's just a very, very special experience. I love it.
Yeah.
I would do it every cruise if I could.
Yeah.
But for folks who are celebrating a special occasion, maybe traveling with a family, you want to do something special together, it just makes the whole experience exponentially better. Nothing at all wrong with the regular Britannia staterooms, the Britannia dining room. Great food, great service, top-notch everything. But this just takes it to the next level. And I always collect the menus, and sometimes it's fun just to kind of page through the menus and say, oh my gosh, that was such a good meal. I really, really enjoyed that. So that is a highlight that only Cunard offers, and it is really, I think, something that sets it apart and makes that luxury experience even more of a luxury experience.
Oh my goodness. You'd think it was right before lunchtime here.
You think it was? Yeah. My stomach is kind of starting to growl.
Goodness.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you have a favorite? I know you mentioned a couple, but did you have a favorite or two in the grills that you were like, that was outstanding?
They really do their seafood
well.
Really? And very, very varied seafood. So they do that well. Obviously, things like beef Wellington, kind of those traditional dishes are kind of fun.
Sure.
I like to go there for lunch.
Okay.
Because it's usually pretty quiet. Most people don't go there for lunch.
Yeah.
They have a really nice lunch menu, but it's just nice to sit down, have a little bit of quiet, talk to the person you're traveling with, have somebody serve you lunch instead of going to a buffet where maybe you kind of have to fight to get your way through. And they do a great job with their buffet, but they're always a little bit crowded. And so, some of the lunch meals are great. Their breakfast is just delightful.
Really?
You just go in and it's served to you beautifully and you just enjoy it. Some of their breakfast quiches are really good. They're baked Alaska.
What is baked Alaska?
Baked
I don't know what
Alaska
that
is
is.
Dessert.
Okay.
So it's ice cream covered with meringue and cherries that they light on fire. Best baked Alaska on the 7 Seas.
Really?
It is phenomenal.
Wow.
And I always ask when I get on, is baked Alaska going to be on the menu for the cruise? And if the answer is no, it always is yes. But if the answer is no, could I have some baked Alaska? Oh, certainly. When would you like it? So they really like to do special requests.
Oh, I love it.
As well. If you have dietary preferences and stuff, they work super, super hard to accommodate those as well. So the whole experience is great. And, it's so fun to go back because the best staff on the ship ends up working in the grills. And you see the same people over and over again. And, it just makes for a nicer experience overall. Not again, there's anything wrong with the main restaurant. And as a luxury product, the pricing is really incredible.
Really?
I think, if you've cruised on a premium cruise line like a Celebrity or a Princess or a Holland America, and you want to try and see kind of what the luxury space is like, Cunard is a great kind of entry point into it.
Interesting
as well.
Did you want to chat about the suites at all? Did you want to?
I know
we're getting a little late on time.
Yeah, the suites and the mini suites, they range from the very large and spacious to the incredibly large and spacious. Yeah, the suites on board the ships are just immense. Yeah, they're super, super nice. The oversized balconies really give you a lot of space. And Cunard goes to Alaska. They go to Norway. They go to places where maybe there's more scenic cruising than the Mediterranean. Yeah. And to have these huge balconies is just absolutely incredible.
That's fun.
The Queen's Grill comes with a butler. And so you just need to think about something and they'll take care of it for you. But the level of personal service and the level of attention is really, really high. The attention to detail is just impeccable.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Again, get me excited about another one of these med cruises.
I'll have to get you on Cunard sometime.
I know. We got to figure this out.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. As always, our expert, Mr. Ted Blank on TED Talks Cruises. You can tune in to us. We're on every week. We have a like and subscribe button that's located down below. You need to click on those because we'd love you to like and subscribe us. And then tell us the best way to get in touch with us if you want to do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, we'll pop a link to our website in the comments below so you can see that, or you can pick up the phone and call my office at 651-964-8245, and we're happy to help you plan your next cruise vacation.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Ted, for joining us, for being a great partner on the TED Talks Travel. Our TED Talks Cruises. I'm making up new names for us.
TED Talks hungry. Travel. I think it's time for lunch break.
I know. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.